What's up, guys? Here we are again with the Pioneer CDJ 2000, and in these next two videos I'm going to walk you through all the features of the digital display and how to use them. Now, this display is very similar to the CDJ 2000 Nexus, CDJ 900, CDJ 900 Nexus, CDJ 850, CDJ 350, and even the XDJ 1000 USB decks that don't even play CDs. It's only USB. Also, the XDJ 1000, CDJ 2000 Nexus, and 900 Nexus have a version of the Rekordbox software that you can use to prepare your tracks, which is integrated in the actual player as well. So their displays have to accommodate that too. In fact, all of these players I just mentioned vary a bit in terms of features and layout, but the core functionality is very similar since all of them offer USB source capabilities. The CDJ 1000 through 1000 MK3 have a much different display because they don't incorporate the USB source capabilities. However, even though it looks a little different, the core features of the CD track info section is still very similar to what's covered in this first lesson about the now playing section of your digital display, which is the CD track section right here. So that portion of the display will definitely translate over to those decks as well. So here we are with the digital display. And it's a 6.1-inch color screen that displays sound waves, track info, library, search functions, cue and looping settings, so that you can navigate through your playlist and control your audio in different ways. So right down here, you'll notice that it's split into two sections. They are what I like to call the now playing section, or the current track information section right here, and the browsing area or information display section, which is up top right here. In this part 1 digital display video, we're going to cover the now playing section, or the track info section right here. So first up, we have the waveform display. This displays the waveform of your audio, whether it be wave, MP3, AIFF, ACC, and then it also has guidance about the wave, like information about it and what's going on your CDJ. Next, we have the memory, or the memory line. This is the line up top here, where it doesn't really look like a line now because there's only one cue point, but this displays the cue points, loop points, and hot cues that are recorded onto the ID3 tag of the track itself, whether you have your track pulling from your USB device or your SD card. So if your actual audio file has cue points or loop points, it displays that right up here at the top line as little orange triangle marks. They're really tiny. They're right there, you can see. Now, you can either create them and save them to memory ahead of time, or you can create them on the fly and save them to memory on the fly during your live DJ set. And we'll get into that a little bit more later when we get into your hot cues and your looping and your cue functions. But next up, we have the cue, which is right below the memory right here, and it spans the line all the way across as well, but we just have one cue point right now, so it's right at the beginning. And it also has a little orange triangle to show you where the cues are and where your loops are. This shows the positions of cue points, loop points, and hot cues below the waveform that are active right now. These are what's saved onto the CDJ itself rather than the audio file. So it's saved onto the SD card at the time that you're playing. This can be a little confusing because the CDJ's memory is the SD card, but if you don't have your track stored on that same SD card, it's just saving the cue points that you're using live in the moment. So say you show up to the club and you pop your USB drive in. Those cue points and loop points and stuff are only going to show up on the memory right here. But the cue line below won't display them until you make them active by storing them in the CDJ's SD card memory. We'll also get into that a little more later, but for now, this is just so you know where that's displayed. Next up is the remain. And remain is right here. And you can toggle between remain and elapsed using this button right here, which is time mode and auto cue. So time mode is remain and elapsed. So when you click it, there's no more remain there. It's invisible. And we talked about a little bit about this in the last video, but when you hit it again, there it is and it shows up. So that's just where you see it, right? And then as far as auto cue, which is right below it, is the same thing we talked about in the last video, where you hold it to deactivate auto cue and hold it down and activate it. So there's that. Remember, this also correlates with the time display right here, the minutes, seconds, and frames. So when it's on remain, you see how much time is left, and when it's on elapsed, you see how much time has passed. But leave it on remain because you need to know how much time is left. That's more important, right? And also with the time display, in regards to frames, there's 75 frames per second. So the seconds are even broken up into smaller increments on this display. Next up is the playing address display, which is this little white vertical line right here. And this line indicates the current playback position of your track. So when you're playing it, you can see it moving. And then also when you hold down the platter, notice it turns red. That's because it's considered stopping. So if you press stop after it's already started playing, it's going to turn red just like that. Now when the elapsed time is displayed, the left side underneath it, see that big long white line? We talked about this a little in the last video. It lights up. So if I set it to elapsed, notice, see right there, there's a white line to the left of it. And then when it's on remain, it shows it, you know, after on the right side. So now when it gets to the end of the track, it's gonna start flashing, right? Like we talked about in the last video. When it's around 30 seconds, let's get it there, it's gonna start flashing slowly. So you see that right there. To let you know that you're getting close to the end and you're about 30 seconds away. Then when it gets to 15 seconds, it's gonna start flashing a lot quicker. So the track is almost out and you better get your next track on. And there it is right there, flashing quicker. Also coinciding with the jog wheel that's flashing quicker. Now the next thing I want to show you is the needle indicator. And no, it's not a turntable needle. It's the needle search ribbon right here. And this is the indicator that shows you if you're able to use it or not to search. So when it's paused, when the CDJ is paused, you can totally search all through your track by rubbing the ribbon right here and get to where you want to be. But once it's playing, you can't anymore. Notice it's gone. And that's saying it's inactive. You can't use it. So nothing happens right here. And if you try to touch it, it says needle lock. So just to remind you that it doesn't work anymore, that it's locked. Next up is quantize. Now for quantize, you need to have a track that is analyzed in the rekordbox software ahead of time. And those are only accessible through the USB, or if you have your CDJs linked like I do. I have the USB stick on the other side and the CDJ is linked over here, so I can access everything over there in the browsing section. Now in the browsing section, we're going to go through that in the next video, but just for now, I'm going to hit link just to get to a song to show you this right now. And I'm going to just scroll through here and find a song, doesn't matter what it is. And okay, so now we have a song. And notice right here, it says quantize right here. And that's because the track was analyzed with rekordbox. So with quantize, when it's turned on, the loop points and hot cue settings are automatically set to the beat nearest position at which the loop or core function was pressed. So I usually keep this on so I don't have to be exactly perfect when I press my loop buttons or whatever, and it'll just shift it, just in case I was slightly off, it'll shift it to the exact loop point, the exact cue in and out points, so that it's a perfect loop. So that's right here, and quantize will just let you know it's on. Now, there are a few situations in which quantize doesn't work. One of them is when a CD is playing with an actual CD, which is kind of a bummer, but it doesn't work with a CD. Another situation is when the CDJ is paused on an audio file that's from your USB. It won't work, but that's actually kind of a good thing, because if your quantize isn't adjusting correctly when it's playing and you set your in and out points, you can actually pause it and adjust it with the needle search here or the jog wheel just to get that exact point of start and stop. So that's a good thing. And then the third situation it doesn't work is when you're playing a track from either your USB drive or your SD card that hasn't been analyzed in rekordbox. And that's because when you analyze tracks in rekordbox, it applies the beat grid, which enables it to quantize. But if it hasn't been analyzed, then the quantize doesn't work. So that's right here, quantize. The next indicator is the master tempo. So when master tempo, or the key lock, remember that button's right here, when that's not active, it won't show up here. But when it's active, you get it right here, master tempo. And right next to that is the BPM indicator. BPM stands for beats per minute. And I'll show you how to count BPM on your own a little bit later. But for now, this is the indicator here on the CDJ, and it detects the beats per minute or the tempo in which the track is playing, basically. no matter what you're playing it on, whether it be a DVD, a CD, USB drive, SD drive. It doesn't have to be analyzed in rekordbox to show you this, which is pretty awesome. It also changes depending on where the pitch is. So if I have it 0, it's saying this track is at 140 BPM, and that's the original BPM for that track. But if I move the pitch slider, see it changes. So I'm moving it up, and now all the way up, it plays at 148. Let me see if I go down. So that's really helpful if you're trying to mix really quick and you're beat matching and you need an extra hand, you know, in addition to mixing with your ears. You can look at the BPM number on the other track and say, okay, well, if that's 140, I need to get this around 140 and let's beat match it. So here's the BPM, super helpful. Now there's another playing speed display right next to it, and this is the percentage in which it's faster or slower than the 0 point. So we have the BPM here that shows the BPMs as it changes, but this percentage point right here, now it's showing 0.18% higher than the 0 point. So even though it says 140, it's actually slightly faster. If I move it back to 0, now it's at 0%. So it shows even those small gradations of the percentage points of BPM, which is also very helpful. Because sometimes you're like, it's the same BPM, why is it not mixing? And then you realize, oh, it's like slightly off. So this is very helpful as well. And last up, we have the playing speed adjustment range display. And that's right here. And this correlates with the tempo range button right here. So the +6, +10, +16, you know, plus and minus 16 wide, all that shows up right there. Another feature in the now playing section is the player number, and that's located right here. This is player number 2, player number 1 is over on the left, and then if we add more, it would go 3 and 4. It goes up to 4. So the player number right there. So that's the basic overview of the now playing section, or the track display section, where all the information for the track sit. In the next video, we're going to discuss the browsing section above. So let's get to it.